Hello and welcome to week 2 of UCSP. Our topic for this week is about the concept, aspects, and changes in culture and society. So, when you talk about concept, what is culture and what is society? Aspects are the parts of our culture and our society, and changes is the things that gradually uh, change over time, or it can happen also quickly. What are the factors why culture and society would change? So this is a very interesting topic, and I hope that you learn something this week. So to make the lecture part of this video easier to understand, I have divided it into 5 segments. So we will talk about the major elements of culture. What is culture? We'll define the different cultural groups. Um, we'll be discussing social process. We'll be discussing different societies and also the cultural trends that's happening in the Philippines right now. So, when we talk about culture, it is an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and norms found in human society, as well as the knowledge, belief, arts, laws, custom, capabilities, and habits of individuals in the group. The art and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. Culture is also the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. The word culture derives from the French term, which in turn derives from the Latin colere. This means to tend the earth and to grow, or cultivation and nurture. So we say we are culturing the minds of the students. So that is also one meaning of culture. So culture again includes the knowledge, beliefs, the arts, the laws, the custom, and the capabilities and habits of individuals in the group. So it is very, very broad. So we will try to break down the parts of culture so that you will better understand every aspect of culture. Okay. So what makes up culture? So culture is made up of values, beliefs, underlying assumptions, attitudes, and behaviors shared by a group of people. So culture is the behavior that results when a group arrives in a set of generally unspoken and unwritten rules for how they will work together. So usually it is unwritten or it is unspoken, but everybody knows what to do because they are part of the same culture. Okay? So, to give more emphasis on the elements of culture, I put forward 5 elements of culture, which are symbols, language, norm, values, and artifacts. So, we'll discuss each and every part of this slide. So when we talk about symbol, these are the basis of culture. Um, it is an object, word, or action that stands for something else with no natural relationship to the that is culturally defined. If you think of a Filipino culture, one thing that stands out as a symbolism is our bayanihan. So maybe an imagery with a pair of people carrying the house, working together in order to transport the house from one place to another. So that symbol represents our cooperation, our kindness. So it doesn't necessarily have to have um, an official meaning, but everybody knows in that particular culture what it really means to be a Filipino based on just one symbol. But symbols also can be different from one culture to the next. Take, for example, the symbol. This is the swastika. On the left, you will see this is the Nazi German swastika, which has been used um, during the World War II. Okay, so many people, especially the Jewish, have a negative connotation or understanding or meaning associated with this because they associate it with oppression, with violence, with injustice. While on the right, we have the same symbol, which is the swastika, but this time it is in the Hindu culture. So, in the Hindu culture, the swastika is representation of luck, of birth and rebirth, of balance in the universe. So everything that is good is represented by the swastika in the Hindu culture. So you see, even one symbol can mean differently in two cultures. Let's continue. Now we go to language. So language always carries meaning and reference beyond itself. The meaning of a particular language is represent the culture of a particular group. So language is not just language. Language defines the culture of the people. Why is language so important in the culture? Because culture cannot be transmitted, cannot be handed down from one generation to the next without language. So this is the means that we are um, passing on our culture to the next generation. Without language, we cannot do that. So language is so important when it comes to culture. Now, to interact with the language means to do so with the culture, which is its reference point. Let me give you a concrete example for this. The Ilonggos are known to be very soft spoken. When they talk, they sound very sweet. Okay, so that is their language, and that is so because that is the part of their culture. So they are generally very sweet and courteous toward other people. Now, when we talk about a language, for example, English, if you have noticed, the English language is very direct if you compare it to our own languages, right? Our language is very, Filipino is very indirect, and we are not we try to avoid being assertive when it comes to English. It's straight to the point, and it is less um it has less euphemism. When you say euphemism, you put things into words to make them sound better than what they really are. So so it talks about, so if you see the difference between the Filipino language and the English language, you will see that these languages might have developed as they are because of the culture that encompasses that embraces that language. So Filipinos are generally non-confrontational. They are very considerate. They don't want to bother anyone. They don't want to offend anyone. Okay, while um, the Western culture, they value more their individuality, their freedom of speech. So you can see it in the language itself. So that's the beauty of language. Okay, let's continue. So language that is what is cultural language? A language that is learned by many members of other speech communities for the sake of access to culture of which it is the vehicle. So as I've said, language is very important for the culture because it's not just part of the culture. It is what um, it is what makes culture possible. Without language, culture will not be possible because we cannot hand down to the next generation or to other people our beliefs, our customs, our traditions, our cuisine, and so on. So, in the Philippines, Filipino is our national language, although it is native tongue to less than a quarter of the population. So, only a quarter of the population speaks Filipino or Tagalog. So, English is widely spoken, Spanish much less so. So, there are 170 indigenous language in total. So, there's a lot of languages in the Philippines with hundreds more dialect. So, the main dialects in the Philippines are Bicol, Cebuano, Ilonggo, Ilocano, Kapampangan, Pangasinan, Tagalog, and Waray. Now, what does it let's talk about this. Why do you think that the Philippines has so many dialects? Remember, we have 170 indigenous languages. Could it be because that we are an archipelago? We are a lot of islands scattered around. That's why each island, each group of island develop its own language, its own culture. So think about that. Unlike in Japan, when there's just one strip of land, so there's really uh, no sea that would that will border uh, their their location. I mean, so if you can see, Japan has only Nihongo as their language because it is spoken throughout the country because there is no um, sub uh, subdevelopment of that particular language. Okay. In China, there are a lot of dialects also, but they have a main language because of the vastness of their land. So, you see, language develops or language changes based on the demography and the topography of a particular place. Okay, let's continue. So again, we'll talk about norms. So norms are something that is usual, typical, or standard. So they are most commonly defined as rules or exceptions that are socially enforced. So different places, different culture have different norms. And norms would change over time. Or norms, yeah, it usually norms would change over time. It is not abrupt. So norms may be prescribed, encouraging positive behavior. For example, be honest, or prescriptive or discouraging negative behavior. For example, do not cheat. So those are the norms. For example, what is the norm in the typical Filipino classroom? So the norm would be when the teacher comes in the classroom. Hold on. When the teacher comes in the classroom, the students would greet him, um, "Good morning." They would usually stand up. That is just the norm. That is what we are used to. Okay? That is different also for other countries. Let's continue. Now, these are some examples of gender specific norms. So, usually, girls wear pinks and boys wear blue. That's why we say that these norms should not be, we should be changing because blues are not just for boys and pinks are not just for girls. So men should be strong and not show emotion. So again, that is what we have accepted for many years. But time it's already changing, right? So girls can or women can also be strong, and men can also show emotion. So women should be caring and nurturing. Yes, it is so, but also men can do this, not just women. So men should do repairs at the house and be one to work and make money, while women are expected to take care of the household and the children. So slowly we see that these norms are changing in the Philippine setting. So we are not so much, there's more equality when it comes to the role of the women and the men in our society. So our norms are already changing when it comes to gender specific norms. So, what are the norms of society? Every society has expectations about its members should and should not behave. A norm is a guideline or an expectation of for behavior. Each society makes up its own rules for behavior and decide when these rules have been violated and what to do about it. Now, we go to values. Values are a person's or society's belief about good behavior and what things are important. Again, for values, it's your personal um, belief on what you think is important for you, or it's the society's um, giving importance to something. Okay, so example of values are loyalty, passion, honesty, efficiency, reliability, dependability, optimism, positivity, and commitment. Now, let's talk about the Filipino values as compared to, for example, the Japanese values about punctuality. Let's talk about that in particular. So, Filipinos are very laid back. Okay, we do not see so much the importance of time. That's why every time Filipinos would come to meetings, to classes late without feeling a sense of um, sense of apology. Oh, when it comes to Japan, when they value punctuality, when they are concerned so much about timing, then that is different. If a Japanese person would come late in a meeting, then he would really feel bad because the society's value or importance to punctuality in Japan is different from the value that we put in the Philippines. But I hope that punctuality becomes a Filipino value. Let's forget about the Filipino time and be on time. Okay, let's continue. Now, artifacts are just objects made by human beings, typically an item of cultural or historical interest. So, something observed in a scientific investigation or experiment that is not naturally present but occurs as a result of perspective or investigation and procedure. So, what are the examples of artifacts there? Okay, so broken pottery, the jars that we have excavated, arrowheads or weapons from ancient times, stone flakes, even our contemporary item like computer mouse or caps and sunglasses or cell phone. These are already artifacts, okay? Why are they artifacts? Because it is made by human and it can show us a glimpse of our uh, of who we are as a people, or of our history, of our past. For example, if you remember, um, If you remember a VHS, I don't know if you remember a VHS. That is already an artifact. A VHS is like a cassette tape that you put inside a VHS machine so that you can watch movies. Now, we don't have that anymore. We just click on Netflix and YouTube and then we can watch movies. So, there is there is a change that happens there, right? From VHS, which is analog, to digital, which is now Netflix and YouTube are some of the streaming platforms that we use in order to watch movies. Okay, so with those changes, we can see also changes in attitudes and changes in our behavior. Okay? So, these things, these material things, like we call artifacts, uh, form part of our culture because they're not just objects. They represent who we are during that time. Okay? They represent how we behaved during that time. Okay? So, they are very important also when we talk about culture and society. Now, I'll just briefly go through this, the cultural groups. Some people interchange community, people, ethnic group, society, and civilization. So, they are overlapping. Okay, so a community can be a group of people, a community can be an ethnic group also. They can have their own society and it can be considered also a civilization, but we'll just for the sake of this lesson we'll just be defining them so that we have a clear understanding throughout the semester what this term in sociology would mean. So excuse my dogs. Okay, let's just okay, I don't know if I will edit this out, but let's see if still have time. I will edit this out. Anyhow, let's continue. So now we talk about community. So a community is a social unit of any size that shares common values. Communities range in size and scope from neighborhoods to national communities to international communities. So they can be physical, face to face, or virtual online. So communities is not just defined by the space that they share. A community can also be defined by their interest or their profession. For example, we have the community that loves to uh, hike. Okay, so the hiking community. So they usually don't see each other every day, but they share a common interest, which is hiking. So that is a community. So our in our barangay, we are a community. In our neighborhood, we are a community. Okay. So, for example, there is also a community of teachers, of architects. They they interact together. They share their knowledge, their skills. So these are all communities. So communities is not limited to just the physical space, but communities can also be formed um, with their interest in mind and their profession in mind. Okay, so that is a community. Now, people, a plurality of person considered as a whole, as in the case of ethnic group or nation. So when we talk about the people, the Filipino people, the American people, okay, so it is a collective term um, that represents an ethnic group or nation. Okay, so collectively, for example, contemporary Frisians and Danes are the two related Germanic peoples. So we have, for Europe, we have the Germanic, we have the Dutch, we have the Italians. Okay, so these are the different people based on their ethnicity. Okay, so let's continue. Now, we have talked about the ethnic group. So, ethnic group are socially defined category of people who identify with each other based on common ancestral, social, cultural, or national experience. So, ethnicity or an ethnic group is a group that is associated with each other based on usually their ancestral origin. So we have the Aitas, the Ibanags, mm, um, the different uh, ethnic groups uh, we have in the Philippines. Okay, so they share a common ancestry, meaning that their genes, their ancestors, okay, came from one culture, one ethnic group. So their beliefs, their norms, their tradition, their culture, their food is different from that of other ethnic groups, because when we talk about ethnicity, it's more of familial or ancestral. Okay, so that is very important to understand. So, membership of an ethnic group tends to be defined in shared culture, heritage, ancestry, origin, myth, history, homeland, language, and dialect. So, you cannot claim that you are a Manobo because don't believe, you don't belong to that tribe. So, you cannot claim that you are a Tausug because being a Tausug means that your ancestors are Tausug and that you are from that part of the country where they reside. So um ex- appreciating and understanding the different wonderful ethnic groups in the Philippines is one of the main things that I am very passionate about, because every ethnicity, every ethnic group has its own that has something different to share and to offer. If you look at the documentaries about the Aitas, their jungle survival skills, how they use bamboo in order to create so many different things, including starting a fire, is really amazing. So we can learn a lot from them, and we can appreciate them, and we can try to preserve their language for uh, the future to enjoy and see, because sometimes these ethnic groups um, it changes also, they become more modern, they forget their um, their heritage, their cultural heritage, which is sad also. Okay, so we're not saying that they should remain um, uneducated, or they should remain um, separate from the main society. What we're saying is that we involve them, we embrace them, and we understand them, for their culture is as rich, if not richer than ours. Do you understand? Okay, let's continue. Now, we go to society. So, how many times have I explained society? Society is a group of people involved in the persistent interpersonal relationship, or a large social grouping sharing the same geographical and social territory, typically subject to the same political authority and dominant cultural expectations. So, a society, again, is a group of people that is living in the same area, who are subject to the same laws, and usually have a dominant culture that is being observed. So, human societies are characterized by patterns of relationship, which is social relations between individuals who share a distinctive cultural and institutions. A given society may be described as a total of such relationship among the constituents and member. So, to in order to define a society, we have to look at the relationship of the actors inside the society. What is the structure of that society? Um, what are the laws that govern that society? So that is how a society is characterized. Okay? They say that to see the true nature of a society is to look at how that society treats its weakest member. So you will see if a society is good if even the weakest member are given opportunities, are given assistance, and are not discriminated against. So that is society. Now we go to civilization. So, a civilization is any complex society characterized by urban development, social stratification, symbolic communication forms, typically written system, and prescribed separation from and domination over the natural environment. So, when you talk about civilization, uh, we can there's a lot of things that comes to mind, right? So, different civilizations happens during different times. Okay, so the ancient Egyptian civilization, for example, the Mesopotamian civilization, these are um, how we express a group of complex societies that they have development, they have stratification, they have their symbols, and it's very interesting to study civilization. Okay, so in the Philippines we have the pre Hispanic civilization, right? So what is the civilization of the Philippines before the Spanish came? Did we have our own language? Did we have our own social stratification? What do you call by stratification? Do we have the chief? Okay, we have the aliping sa gigilid, aliping namamahay. So we all have these roles in society, okay, that we have already established even before the Spanish came. So we have again symbols, okay, and we knew how to uh, f- use pearls, how to use natural resources in order to adorn our um, or for aesthetics purpose. So that is an example of civilization. Okay, so in Rome there is an ancient civilization, the Pantheon, okay, the Colosseum. So that is also a civilization. Let's continue. So now we go to another part of our discussion for this week, which is the mechanism of change. So, how does change happen in society and in culture? So, with the society changing as fast as the society found inside America, sociologists found it easiest to predict the changer based on three essential social processes. These processes are the causes that result in significant social change. So, um, there are three um, processes that causes change. We'll go through them one by one. Yan. So these are the social process, and this causes the culture and the society to change. So first we have discovery, second is invention, and third is diffusion. I'll try to explain each and every one of them. So, we talk about discovery. So, discovery is the process by which something is learned or reinterpreted. So, influence is changed by causing people to learn new things, which may change their viewpoint or change their routine to better themselves based off of the new information found through discovery. For example, when the early explorers began to explore the ocean, they discovered that the Earth wasn't flat, but rather round. So this led to new maps being printed as well as the new waterways and trade routes developing to, due to new exploration under the idea that there was no end to the Earth to fall off of. Alright, so discovery is something that humans continue to do. We discover everything, every day, something new. And as we discover these things, personally and as human beings, okay? When they say personally, you discover something new every day, and as a whole humanity, something is discovered every day. It can be an element that we have discovered, or a new way of doing something that is already a discovery. um so when we discover something, it changes the way we think, the way we behave, the way we feel, the way we look at things. Therefore, if it changes us individually, it can also affect those change within the society, within the culture over time. Okay? The more people that believe the same way as you on the new discovery that happened, okay, the faster the changes would happen inside the culture and society. Next, invention. So, creation of something new from the previous existing items or processes. So, as I've said earlier, before, okay, before VHS, we only have television. And if you want to watch a program, you have to wait for the schedule of that program. If you miss that program, you cannot get you cannot play it again. Okay, you missed it. You cannot. There's no way that you can watch it again. But now, since we have invented this streaming, we have internet. Okay, invention of the internet. Um, we have changed the way we watch movies. Okay, or so let's continue. Inventions change society by providing it with new items and ideas which continue to evolve into easier, more efficient processes. So humans have the capacity and the tendency to always make life easy. That is our drive. Okay, so every day there's new invention. Every day there is new development. Okay, it will never stop until the humans um, exist. Okay, invention will not stop. So, for example, when the airplane was invented, it led to faster transportation and space exploration. Before there was airplane, people used to travel by boat, and it would take weeks, even months, just to go from one place to another, right? So, inventions serve as an indicator as to how fast a society will change due to the fact that one invention existing then and more invention can be developed from those invention and so forth. So the changes in society, the development of society is very closely related to inventions. That's why it's very important that the Filipinos become more scientific, because we can only hope to develop our country if we come up with our own inventions and not just copy from other countries. Okay, because when we invent something, for example, the U.S. Army was able to invent the internet. Okay, it started out as a project for the U.S. U.S. military. Okay, so they weren't thinking anything, or they weren't thinking of what we know the internet now. For them, they just want to share files. Okay, through distance. Okay, that is where the first computers were connected. That was the internet. When one computer is connected to another computer, they call it internet. But now our definition of internet has exploded because of the different ways people have invented um, a way to use this technology and to make the people's life easier. Okay? So, from a simple concept of connecting two computers and sharing information from one computer to the next, to now we do everything with internet. If you're not connected to internet, then you feel a disconnect because we are so dependent on the internet. Okay? Let's continue. And the last process is diffusion. So diffusion is the process by which one culture or society borrows from another culture or society. So, uh, I think a very concrete example of this is the Filipinos' uh, love for K-pop, okay, or Korean pop culture. So, you see diffusion happening not just with the K-pop itself, the music, but the hairstyle, the way, even the food. Okay, so it is diffusing into our culture. It's being part of our culture. When before we wouldn't find any Korean restaurants or Korean fashion, but now since the popularity of K-pop, then slowly our culture is um, being influenced by the Korean pop culture, is widely influenced by the contact that one society has with another. The more interaction societies have, the easier their culture will begin to bleed together. Okay, so if we always interact with one another, then there will be a blending of cultures. Okay, of course, an element from one culture has to blend well with the life and activities of another before it is adopted. So sometimes the differences in culture are so far apart that it cannot blend. Okay, but if the cultural beliefs, customs, cuisines, traditions are somewhat similar with one another, there is a greater chance of diffusion. So diffusion have occurred within America several times, such as when the English settlers develop new planting and harvesting methods from the Native Americans. So you see here the diffusion in America. The Native Americans have provided the technology and the knowledge to the Europeans on how to plant potatoes. Okay, so because they are the ones who know how to do it. Um, so the Native American culture provided the settlers with the means of survival, and therefore the settler easily accepted or adopted their culture. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so now we go to society. The next part of this very long discussion. So, society is a group of individuals involved in the persistent social interaction, as I've said earlier. Let's continue. So we go to the types of society. So look at the table. We sociologists have um, sep- defined or divided uh, the different society into pre-industrial, industrial, and post-industrial. So pre-industrial is the time when between the hunting and gathering until the agricultural. Okay, from here, hunting, gathering, foraging, pastoral, horticultural, and agricultural. So these are all under pre-industrial. And then we have the industrial and the post-industrial. So we will talk about the different types of society. Okay. So in the pre-industrial, from the again hunting gathering to agrarian, the food production, which is carried out through the use of human and animal labor, is the main economic activity. Okay, those societies can be subdivided according to the level of technology and the method of producing food. So, in the pre-industrial, the main focus of the societies under that is food production. How do we survive? Okay, let's continue. Okay, so this is the pre-industrial. So we have the hunting gathering, the pastoral, when they learn to domesticate animals, the horticultural, when they learn to plant in a small scale. Okay, and then the agricultural, where they learn to tend lands on a bigger scale. And husbandry, animal husbandry. Okay? Okay. So, hunting and gathering, the main form of food production in such societies is daily collection of wild plants and hunting wild animals. So, in the old times, okay, when civilization is just dawning, okay, people would be focused on gathering, collecting wild plants and wild or hunting wild animals. They didn't have the technology to create their own food, so they are dependent on the nature. So if the nature is, or if there's no food or animal to eat, then they would move around places to places in order to find food. So usually the people here, or the communities, or the society are small because they cannot build permanent villages or create a wide variety of artifacts, and usually only form a small groups such as bands and tribes. Now, after the pastoral, the hunting and gathering society, there became the pastoral society. So pastoral means you have a herd of animals, and then the animals are the ones who are eating on their own. We don't feed them, but we let them go to the grass, and that they reproduce on its own. Okay, by husbandry, but it's not initiated by the the humans themselves. So pastoralism is slightly more efficient from form of subsistence. So because we the humans learn to have animals as a source of their food, uh, the societies became more stable compared to the they just hunt and they just gather food, right? So rather than searching for food on a daily basis, members of pastoral society rely on domesticated herd animals to meet their food needs. So Herds of animal can be sheep, can be lamb, can be cows. So these are the animals, or camels if it's from the desert. So pastoralism live a nomadic life. Why do they have to move even if they have herds of animals that can sustain them? Because the grass that they need to feed the animals uh, depletes every time, so they have to keep moving. So because their food supply is far more reliable, pastoral societies can support larger population. So if you watch the nomads in Mongolia, try to watch a documentary about them. They are still practicing pastoralism. They have herds of animals and they move from one, they still live a nomadic life. Yeah. That's a very interesting documentary to watch. The Nomads of Mongolia. Now, we have horticulture. So horticulture, fruits and vegetable grown in garden plots that have been cleared from the jungle or forest provide the main source of food in the horticultural society. So they from the pastoral, they now can grow fruits and vegetables in their garden. So these societies have a level of technology and complexity similar to pastoral society. Some horticultural groups use slash and burn method, or kaingin, like in the Philippines before. So while vegetation is cut and burned and the ashes are used as fertilizer. So horticulturalists use human labor and simple tool to cultivate the land from one or a more season. So, um, very if even if they are planting, if they are growing their own food, they are very still very limited in terms of technology, in terms of fertilization, in terms of growing their crops. So when the land becomes barren, the horticulturalists clear a new plot and leave the old plot or revert to its natural state. So again, the horticultural society, like the kaingin system in the Philippines, they're gonna burn down a forest. They're gonna use that land for how many years. If it's no longer fertile, they're gonna move and do the same process again. And now we go to the agrarian. This is the last society under pre-industrial. So agrarian society use agricultural tools advanced to cultivate crops over a large area. So if horticultural is just a small plot and they keep moving, when it became agrarian, they have more knowledge, more technology in order to support a larger field of area. Okay, so sociologists use the phrase agricultural revolution to defer to the technology changes occurred as long as 85,000 years ago that led to cultivating crops and raising farm animals. So agrarian is not just having um, planting in a large scale, but also animal husbandry. We learned uh, to take care of pigs so that we can have the meat. We had cows so for their milk. We have sheep for their fur, and so on. So agrarian learned a lot and did a lot for food production, since the food production or the availability of food in the agrarian societies are better than the past societies. They people start settling down in groups. So they start forming communities. Okay, so the increase in food supplies led them to larger population than the earlier communities. This meant greater surplus, which resulted in towns that became centers of trade, supporting various rulers, educators, craftsmen, merchants, religious leaders who did not have to worry about locating nourishment. So, as they have more food, as they have more supplies, um, they can focus on other things like art, education, music. Okay, so now we go to the second classification of society, which is industrial. So a society driven by the use of technology to enable mass production, supporting a large population with a high capacity for division of labor. So, industrial is technology driven. Industrial society is about mass production, is about assembly lines, is about factories. Okay, so if an society is producing uh, goods, and that is their main source of food production, then they can be considered industrial. So, here now in the modern times, China, for example, is an industrial society because a considerable portion of its economy is tied to jobs that involve mechanized labor like factory farming or auto assembly plants, which involves a combination of machines and human employees to produce consumer goods. So, as we all know, most of our gadgets, most of our clothes are produced in China in big factories. So, they are a very good example of what an industrial society is. And we have, of course, the last one of the society, which is post-industrial. So, in the post-industrial society, uh, the development, the focus is on service. The focus is in information rather than goods. Okay? Rather than manufacturing, we focus on development, um, information technology, um, invention. So, from the factory, okay, to the boardroom, ika nga. Okay? Let me explain to you further. So, the transition from production of goods to the production of service, with a few firms directly manufacturing any goods. So, again, we are now focusing on service. Internet service, communication service, okay, food service. We're not just manufacturing, okay? We are focusing on service. For example, call center. They provide service. They don't produce physical goods, but they provide service. It's one example of an industry that is service driven. Okay? So, the replacement of blue collar manual laborers with technical and professional workers, such as computer engineers, doctors, and bankers, as a direct production of goods is moved elsewhere. So the main production is moved elsewhere, and then their focus now is on service, on technology, on inventing new things, on gaining new knowledge. That is the post-industrial. So the replacement of practical knowledge with theoretical knowledge. Greater attention is being paid to theory and empirical ethical implications of new technologies, which help society avoid some of the negative features of introducing new technologies such as environmental accidents and massive widespread power outages. Hmm. Okay, let's continue. So, currently in our world, post-industrialism exists in Europe, Japan, United States. Okay, so these are the developed countries where the population or the society has a very good social welfare. Okay, because they could afford, okay, to take care of their citizens, because again they have discoveries, they have inventions. So instead of, for example, let's talk about medicine. So the post-industrial societies would focus on the development or the discovery of a vaccine, or um, the invention of a medicine. But they will not focus on producing that medicine. They will pass it to the industrial societies like India, China, Pakistan, where the manufacturing will take place. But they will, since they are the ones who invented it, who discovered it, then they are the ones who have more profit from the product rather than those who are just manufacturing it them uh, manufacturing that for them. Okay, so cell phones are developed in Europe, in the US, right? The Apples, okay, or in Korea, Samsung. But where do they produce it? Not there. Okay, they produce it somewhere else to get cheaper labor and cheaper material. Their focus is inventions and discovery and technology. That is post-industrialism. Okay. Now, an article written by Chiki Escarialgo in the Philippine Daily Inquirer outlines some cultural trends that might affect how Filipinos buy product. Let's look at it briefly. Okay. So, home. So, the absence of parents is in a third of a home, and the increasing role of school in instilling values. So, um, before, in our society, in our culture, every day you see your parents, but now more and more homes do not have parents. Okay, it can be that they are working somewhere else, OFW, or they are separated. But school has a very important role now in instilling values with the child. Okay, so social disorders associated with increasing absences of parents in the lives of children. For example, we have drugs, child sex abuse, teen pregnancy, among other. So more and more we see these issues rising because of the lack of parental control over the children. If I remember my parents, at 6 o'clock every night you have to be at home because they are at home. Okay, and now most of our parents don't know who we are even at 10 p.m. Okay. So the change in the boundaries and the sequences of love, marriage, sex, and family. We are changing our concept of love, of marriage, sex, and family. Before, in the times of our lolos and lolas, okay, uh, when you see the ankle of a woman, it means that you have to marry that woman and you have to uh, serve that family so that you can get her hand in marriage. Okay, now those are gone. We have change again, change could be for the better or for worse. As we see our society changes, our customs, our beliefs, our norms changing, we ask ourselves if are we are these changes for the better or for the worst? Okay, the rise in the number of single parents. Many parents are single parents. Before, it is not during my time when you are a single parent, the society does not look so kindly on you. But now, since there are more and more single parents, okay, so they are more accepted now in the society. They are more understood by the society, which is good, right? Because you cannot discriminate against single parents because you will never know what they have experienced in their lives. Okay, so next, the trend towards late marriages and smaller family. Yan. Before in the Philippines, we had the principle or the thinking or the belief is your children are your treasures in life. So you have to have 10 children, 14 children, okay, 8 children. But now, since life is hard, life is difficult, parents are opting for smaller families and they're starting their families later than hopefully than before. Next. Okay. The upgraded role of music as a surrogate companion. What do you mean by this? Surrogate companion. Everywhere you see young people walking alone but with their headset on, playing music on their phone. Okay. They don't communicate with their surrounding, with the people around them. Or sometimes they're gonna talk, but you think that they're talking to you, but in fact they are not talking to you, but talking using their their wireless earset or headphones. So we ask ourselves, uh, is that good for our society when we are so i- connected with each other, but we are so isolated? Okay, we don't know anymore how to conduct ourselves with other people around us. We don't know how to approach someone because we do it through social media. Okay, so think about those changes and so on. So there are a lot. I will not enumerate them a lot, but think of how our society and our culture is changing. Okay, so to wrap up, to summarize, change is happening everywhere and at any time and to anyone. Some changes are for better, some changes are for the worst. As a member of society, we must be mindful of the changes that is happening around us. We cannot just close our eyes and ignore what is happening around us, the changes. Okay? We must be aware and conscious of the changes that is happening around us. We must use our own discernment and judge if the change has a positive or negative impact, not just for ourselves, but for our society in general. Not because this is the trend, this is what is becoming the new norm. It doesn't mean that it is what is right. Okay? So, you have to make a stand. Because if you make a stand and everybody thinks critically, maybe the trend will not be the norm because it's not beneficial for everyone. You know what I mean? Okay. Also, as a valuable part of the society, you must be the change. Okay, do not just play the victim role. This is what society has made me. I am born of a poor family. That's why I'll be always be poor. Be the change. If you want to improve yourself, if you want to achieve something in life, do not blame circumstances. Do not blame the society. Do not blame the culture. But instead, work hard in order to achieve what you want to achieve in life. Be the change. Affect change. Not just for yourself, but for others as well. We must not wait for change to happen to us. We must be active participants in the development um, of family, community, and society, and humanity as a whole. So, with that, I will end my long discussion with my dogs barking. This is the performance task that I would be giving to you. We'll discuss it in our Google class. I will not discuss it in this video anymore. Thank you and God bless. I hope you learned something today. If you have questions about this lecture, just send me a PM, okay? You know how to reach me. Okay, bye bye. Till next time. See ya.